The early 2000s was a bleak time for horror, filled with edgy, mean-spirited, borderline nihilistic vibes. I kid slightly, but it's just not the kindest era of people, much more cynical, but I know there's a lot of people that love this era of horror, and there's definitely a lot to appreciate. Hell, a lot of the classics we love spawned in this era. The Saw franchise, the Paranormal Activity franchise, and the found footage-esque movies, although I do credit Blair Witch for being the one to have kickstarted that subgenre, but Paranormal Activity is the one that made that cultural splash. J-horror was really having a moment too. There was definitely a lot of great things that came out of this era, and not just bad effects, bad acting, and PG-13 horror cascading into theaters and TV to accommodate broader audiences. All this to say, one of the most fun and arguably innovative franchises that also came out of this era was the Final Destination franchise. Originally inspired by an X-Files episode, Jeffrey Reddick took what was a small project at first and made it into the beloved feature-length film that we know today. Jeffrey Reddick, I feel, is a bit of an underappreciated director, not because this movie isn't as big as it should be, but like Wes Craven, he saw the state of horror, and in particular the slasher subgenre, and how it was in shambles, and a ghost of its former self. Slashers by the 90s were seen as lesser films. In general, broader audiences already wrote off horror, but things had gotten so bad that even within the horror community, things looked grim. Obviously, Scream shattered that and reignited the subgenre, but frankly, so did Final Destination. Not in the same way as Scream, obviously, but if you take out death as a force of nature and plop in any random killer, nothing about the movie changes. Final Destination is a slasher just without the physical killer, but it follows the exact same formula, cliches, story beats, all of it. It's brilliant how it was able to cloak itself to look so different, because obviously it's able to get away with so much more absurdity with the force of nature rather than a guy running around with a machete. And so because of that, the movie can get grander, bolder, and more insane and remind people that horror is cool and to not write it off. The premise follows Alex, played by horror icon Devon Sawa, who was going to take a flight for a class field trip. However, he has a premonition that the plane is going to viscerally explode. So he plays the crazy person card and causes a scene so he and a few of his friends can get off the plane. And of course, moments later, he's proven right, because the plane in fact absolutely bursts in the most over-the-top way. It's great, and that moment is just one of the many iconic moments in this franchise. And for the rest of the runtime, we follow the young heroes trying to cheat death for as long as possible, since they were supposed to die on that plane. It's honestly hysterical how the intro plays out, because that explosion would never create such a shockwave that the glass in the airport would shatter the way it does, yet it's still awesome. And obviously I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this is before 9/11, so of course the easiness of him being let off the plane or the lack of regulations were certainly not present here. But it is crazy to think that this happened before 9/11, which was relatively close in time. Similar to how in A New Nightmare, which wrote in an earthquake, and it was actually shot on the Northridge earthquake site. Creepy stuff, no? Anyway, Devon Sawa is the heart of this film. He is a strong surrogate that we follow throughout the film. He brings such a strong sense of wit, charm, and silliness to his performance that you just can't help but like the guy. And honestly, for as great as Devon Sawa is here, the rest of the cast is really strong as well. These characters aren't annoying or miserably cynical as some of the other characters in the later installments are. These characters have that late 90s cozy, silly vibe to them. And of course, you just throw in the legend Tony Todd as arguably a manifestation of death or warning. That's casting right there. And the movie balances levity and seriousness very well. These characters that survive the premonition deal with survivor's guilt, the deaths themselves are really gnarly, so the movie doesn't shy away from being dark when it needs to be. But then you also have a character named Shrek. This man's name is Shrek. It's physically impossible not to laugh when Detective Shrek is introduced. Obviously it's not meant to be meta, but damn, that whole character feels like such a bit. A premise like this is so brilliant in many ways. The idea that these characters effectively dodged death, and now death wants to kill them in the order they were supposed to die, it's genius. You've given both the characters and the viewer a challenge to figure out the puzzle of what is that order, and how can we stop it even if we figure out what that order is. It's literally death. It's too nebulous of an idea to get a read on it or predict how or what it's gonna do. Unpredictability is one of the most effective ways to keep the tension high in horror. And I even love the inclusion of Rocky Mountain High being like a trigger warning to let you know something bad is about to happen. It's consistently there if you listen, but it's also subtle enough to where it's not completely obvious either. It leaves a lot of creative room for setups, but it also leaves a lot of room for the characters to have their own moments of both heroism and stupidity. The environments and possible scenarios aren't restricted or limited to just like a campsite or rural America, it can use any environment to spice up the kills. And on top of that, there's a lot of eye candy in these movies. It's hard not to see a modern movie that involves highways, coffee cups, tanning beds, roller coasters, hell, even weightlifting machines, and not instinctively think of Final Destination. And that in itself is a merit to the franchise as a whole. Regardless of the slopey journey of this series, it's really not debatable that this franchise is chock full of iconic after iconic sequences and visuals. Is the movie perfect? No, obviously not. Some of the effects are admittedly dated. It still gets on my nerve that for whatever arbitrary reason, Death decided to retract the water to not leave a trail of evidence? What the hell is that? It's dumb because not only is Death itself an enemy, but so is writing inconveniences so things can work out by the end. As much as I hate to admit it, I'm never really sold on Alex and Clear's relationship. Ali Larter and Devon Sawa are both good actors and their performances independently are solid, but as a couple it just never really works for me. There's literally a version of this story playing out where it feels way more real and way better payoff when it comes to Alex, especially considering how his story goes later. The movie kind of relies on exposition dumps with the most random and forced encounters. It's fine, it doesn't harm the experience, but it is strange. Like just from a narrative and believability standpoint, it's a bit odd, isn't it? This movie rocks regardless of its minor flaws, and clearly it spearheaded a fun as hell franchise, so hopefully Bloodlines keeps that same level of energy. But that's it for me. I'd appreciate a thumbs up, subscribe, and sincerely yours, Anthony.